Yeah, hi. My first question's for APRA. I note that just in the last 5 years, or from June 17 to June 22, the number of branches open in Australia has decreased from 5,694 to 4,014, a decrease of 30% just in 5 years. Does APRA include offices that don't offer face-to-face services as a branch?
Thank you for your question, Senator. So you're correct. We have a data collection role. That's in addition to our role as Prudential Regulator, where we focus on safety and stability of the system. I'm going to ask my colleague, Mr Trevorrow, to answer the detail of your question.
Yep. So in our reporting standards, the definition of a branch does include face-to-face presence.
It does include face-to-face?
Correct.
But are you counting those offices that don't offer face-to-face services as a branch?
So in our reporting standard, the definition of a branch is a location that provides face-to-face service and maintains a fixed address and then provides a range of services as defined in the standard.
Right, okay.
Okay, sorry, just to quickly butt in, sorry, Senator Rennick, given the number of witnesses here, we've just had a request that before anyone speaks for Hansard, could you just say your name again briefly? Sorry about that. It'll just help us with transcription. Back to you, Senator Rennick.
Okay, next question is, do you take into account the full-time or part-time status of a branch? So if a branch is only open from, say, 10 o'clock to 1 o'clock, is that counted as a half branch or a full branch?
No, we do not.
So that is, Senator, that is a full branch.
Can I just remind people to say their name?
Sorry, McCarthy Hockey.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so the decline in hours isn't being reflected. So not only have we got a loss of 30% of branches, we've actually, that's worse because we're not taking into account the loss of hours. Sorry. So some of the feedback we've got throughout this inquiry is that branches or banks have closed branches in towns without any prior warning that they were going to close the branch, or very little warning. How is it that APRA hasn't enforced the community service obligations of the banks when they close branches in small towns?
McCarthy Hockey. Thank you, Senator, for your question. So where you're going with this line of questioning is a very good one, and that actually lines up with the work we're doing. As part of the Regional Banking Task Force, Branch Task Force of 2022, we were tasked with a requirement to go ahead to review our points of presence. In fact, we are consulting on that at the moment, and it has a two-phase consultation, and that goes to those questions you're asking. What are the questions that the community, the users of the data, would like to see in the points of presence data publication that we make? We do take it very seriously that in doing this work that is of use, and so therefore we have sought to try and understand in the first phase. In fact, we're very happy to share some of our insights we've already gained, and Ms Wong would cover that if that would be of interest. We are looking first at how is it used? What does it mean? What would you like to see? And so on. And it goes to those questions you're asking. That's the first phase. And we're just collating that at the minute. And then we'll be assessing that. We're also actually taking information from this inquiry. So thank you for the referrals we've received. They're kind of part.
Okay, thank you. So if we identify towns whereby the last bank has left town without fulfilling, because my understanding of the community service obligation was that the last bank wasn't supposed to leave town. And I'll note in our regional centres, just in the last 5 years, we've dropped from 817 branches to 569. So that's about 250 decline in branches. So there are many towns in Australia that have lost their last major bank or significant bank. Are you prepared to go back and make these banks reopen their branches in these towns as per the community service obligation? And if they're not prepared to do that, are you prepared to revoke their banking licence because they have a social licence to provide these services?
McCarthy Hockey. Thank you, Senator, again, for those important issues that you're raising. I might just talk about our role. So our role is as a prudential regulator of the system, and we focus on the safety and security of the system. And that means for a deposit, any depositor putting a deposit with the bank, we focus on the safety for that deposit. And that means we focus on prudential measures like the capital of the bank, the liquidity of the bank, the risk management practices of the bank, and things like emerging risks, not just traditional risks in credit and liquidity, but emerging risks like cyber risk is a really prevalent challenge in the system. So the ability to manage those, that they have the right systems and processes around that.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry. Our second role relates to the data collection itself, and that's where we hope to support this inquiry. Your reference to those other matters are not within our remit, and we don't focus on those as a part of a banking licence.
So whose responsibility is it to enforce the community service obligation? Do you know?
That is not something I'm aware of in enforcement perspective.
Okay, no worries. Okay, so back to your capital management, your risk weighting. Is it fair to say, is it true that the major banks have a lower risk weighting requirement than smaller banks?
So thank you, Senator McCarthy-Hockey. So what we have is a capital framework which is calibrated for the risk of the risk that banks take. We have different requirements according to two major categories. One is for sophisticated financial institutions, that's called an SFI, and a non-sophisticated financial institution. And those are calibrated to allow for more complex organisations to run more complex models. They come with cost, expertise, and other overheads in running those kinds of complexities. And then we have also smaller, for the smaller organisation, we have something called standardised, which is simpler to run and a lower cost base. So ultimately, we believe we've calibrated that model appropriately, and it does go to calibrate according to the risk and costs of those risk systems.
Okay, thank you.
Authorised G. Rennick, LNP Chermside.